Welcome to Profiles in Purpose. This is your host, Dan Kostka. Today I'm joined by Jocelyn Hastie, someone whose love of horses and the Western life has given her a sense of purpose and is strongly connected to her identity. I just want to welcome Jocelyn. Thank you for joining me today.
I am really happy to be here with you today, Dan.
So, as I mentioned, horses play a big part in your life. When did they first start to play such a big role for you?
They started to play a big role for me in about 1992. I was about 30 years old and married a cattle rancher's son. And I truly found, I believe, my heart and soul in country living and in horses.
And what was it that attracted you to them so much?
Well, I was really laser focused on climbing the corporate ladder when I was in my 20s. I was working full time as an accountant for an energy company in downtown Calgary and studying to be a certified general accountant evenings and weekends. At 22, I was promoted to accounts payable supervisor and I had a staff of 5, and horses really were the very farthest thing from my mind. I changed jobs and I married a coworker, and he was equally career driven, and we often visited his parents' cattle ranch, and the family had been riding horses there for years. I admired the horses from behind the safety of the windows.
Hmm.
I was mesmerized by their power and grace, but they scared me because I was afraid that if I got too close, they might kick me or bite me or step on me. And the
Hmm.
horses on the ranch really were seasoned ranch horses. They were completely unsuitable for a novice like me. But then one day, my father-in-law brought home a horse just for me. Trigger was a breathtaking mahogany bay with a brown body and jet black mane and tail and legs. He was beautiful. And the moment I saw him, Dan, I felt instantly in love. I believe in love at first sight, but it's only ever happened for me with horses. Horses really did become, at that point in time, my greatest teachers. I'd been supervising staff for about 8 years, and I believed that my promotions were a testament to my superior leadership skills. But the truth was that my technical accounting expertise had earned me the promotions. And back in the 1980s, there were very few female supervisors in accounting, and my leadership style really mirrored what I'd seen. It alternated between bribery and bullying. And that worked well in the office where I had positional power, but the horses didn't care about the titles. Horses really do respond to energy and authenticity. And although they happily accepted my bribes of carrots and apples, they refused to follow my lead. Some of the more aggressive riders advised me, you can't let them win. So I tried pushing them around, but they responded by avoiding me altogether.
Hmm.
So I found the fake it till you make it strategy that worked in the boardroom did not work in the corral. And as a young woman in a management role, I was frequently spoken over and dismissed. And I told myself it's not that big a deal. But truly, my body knew better. I had a tight throat, shallow breathing, sleepless nights. And horses are masters of herd dynamics. They sense incongruence, they respond to the truth behind the mask.
Hmm.
Truly, they test boundaries, they avoid bullies, they walk all over doormats. And my lack of confidence and conviction didn't inspire trust or cooperation from them, and they mirrored my uncertainty. They did what they felt was necessary to keep them safe because they didn't trust me to keep them safe.
Hmm.
The turning point came when I realized I wasn't fooling them and that their unfiltered feedback pushed me towards self-awareness and authenticity. When I could get centered and grounded, they would look to me as a leader. What horses look for in a leader is not the one that has the power, Dan. What horses are looking for is the horse that leaves them feeling safe. So for horses, the essence of leadership is safety. And I
Hmm.
think that is far truer for humans than we realize.
Hmm.
That there may be a leader who is in the position of power, but when you look around the other people in a meeting, there is always someone that people look to for influence. So they read the facial expressions of that person and will largely follow what that influential person within the group is telegraphing, even more than the one that has the position power.
Right. And in your role as a communication and resilience and leadership coach, do you often use stories and examples from your experiences with horses and on ranches when you're conveying principles or lessons to the people you're helping?
Almost always. And I can share a little one with you about two horses that I had, and they were Colorado and Ricky. They were brothers. Colorado was the eldest, and he really was a bully, Dan. When I threw hay for the herd, he'd use his teeth and his hooves to claim the best pile. And the other horses, they all tolerated him, but they really kept their distance from him. Ricky was about in the middle of the herd. There were about 7 horses in the herd. Colorado was the boss, and Ricky was probably number 4. He was calm, he was secure, he was respectful. When Ricky had an itch, there was always another horse willing to indulge in a mutual back scratching session with him. Ricky never grazed alone. When Ricky went for a drink, everybody went for a drink. Someone always stood over Ricky when he napped. And when I would walk out with the halter, the horse's reactions would speak volumes. If I would catch Colorado, the others were relieved. They were glad to be rid of him for a little while. But if it was Ricky that I put the halter on, they followed him like the Pied Piper. So what I saw there is that Colorado may have been the boss, but Ricky was the chosen leader. The herd trusted and respected Ricky, not out of fear, but because they felt safe around him.
It's a great example. And I want to back up a bit before we talk more about the coaching you offer, the lessons from horses, because a lot of people are thinking perhaps of making a big change in their life, something that just makes them feel more grounded or just is more connected to their values, makes
Right.
them, the kind of person they want to be. And you were working in this corporate setting in downtown Calgary. Like, how drastic a change did you make? Like, I understand you moved to the south of the city, is that right? To a farm setting. What kind of sacrifice did that involve, and why did you feel the need to do that?
Actually, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice at all.
Hmm.
In the city, there was so much hustle and bustle. And I almost felt physically assaulted just by the number of people and the noise that was around me.
Hmm.
But I truly did feel peace in my soul out in the quiet of the country. Now, I have friends that one friend in particular came and stayed here for a few days when I traveled once. And she said to me, I could not wait to get back home. I felt so lonely and isolated out there.
Hmm.
And I was nervous. What if something happened to me? And those things cross my mind occasionally, but I really do find peace in my soul. I genuinely like the quiet and the solitude. And that doesn't mean I dislike spending time with people. I love people and I'm a bit of an extrovert, but I also truly appreciate the time I can spend in reflection.
Hmm.
And I find it easier to do out in the quiet of the country.
And I understand that you offer others that opportunity by offering ranch retreats. Is that right?
That is true. It is absolutely my pleasure and delight to introduce, it's been primarily women to this point in time, to introduce them to horses. For many women, coming to the ranch is the first time that they have had the opportunity to lead on a halter, something that is much bigger and stronger than they are, but who is willing to follow their direction. So they get to really experience that in their body, what it feels like to do that. So for me, it is about having the experience of doing that kind of thing. Another thing that I really love to do is what I call mindful grooming. So I set them up with a horse and they spend 45 minutes just brushing the horse and connecting with it.
Hmm.
And appreciate being in nature and building this connection with something that they probably never thought they'd have an opportunity to do before they arrive at the ranch.
Hmm. Wow. On your website, thecowgirlscode.com, I liked something that's there. It says how cowgirl confidence is an attitude, tenderness, and toughness. Is that how you see yourself? Tender but tough?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that in many ways, my tenderness came in at a high cost, Dan, in that I was treated for cancer about 10 years ago. And
Mm,
I was really afraid to be vulnerable. I saw any kind of vulnerability as weakness. But because I was so sick, I had to allow people to help me. If I hadn't, my animals just wouldn't have survived my illness.
mm,
So that tenderness of accepting my own tenderness and vulnerability and being compassionate to the vulnerability of others, I don't think I would have done that, definitely not to the extent I do now, if I hadn't had that experience.
mm. Wow, yeah. Now, I had the opportunity to meet you a couple of weeks ago. It was at a public speaking competition, which you happened to win with your brilliant speech. And I mean that sincerely. It was very inspiring and just very memorable. And you were talking in that speech about focusing on errors in your life versus moments of brilliance. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what you covered in that speech?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And interestingly, Colorado is the star of that speech as well.
Mm,
And the thing with Colorado is that he was absolutely a natural athlete. He was a rock star if energy and forward movement were required. In particular, the thing he did is a serpentine pattern is when you bend first to the left and first to the right, doing big S's almost. And Colorado would bend so beautifully and fluidly. It truly felt like a magic carpet ride, but he struggled with stillness. And part of what we were judged on is stop, back 5 steps, and stand quietly. And Colorado just did not cope well with standing quietly in particular. So it was difficult for the two of us to hold it together for a whole class. And I have Peruvian horses, and many of the judges were North American. And we would often get reserve champion, but we'd never won titles. And it was partially because of Colorado's inability to stand quietly. And I knew he was poetry in motion, but he struggled with stillness. And the reality is, I did too.
mm,
But what the judge said to me is, and I'll play with my Spanish accent here, there are two ways to choose a champion. In North America, most select the horse that makes the fewest errors. I choose the one with the most moments of brilliance.
mm,
And before I had that conversation with him, I would get stuck in the moment I failed my quest for perfection. And then I'd multiply the mistakes and I'd judge myself on that accumulation of errors. But after talking to him, I quit worrying about the things I didn't do perfectly. And instead, I learned to search out and celebrate the moments of brilliance, those times when everything aligns in unexpected perfection.
mm.
And I think that is such a huge lesson. It certainly has been for me, and it changed my life in many ways. And indeed, after that particular class and that particular competition, Colorado and I went 2 years undefeated, where nobody could beat us. And I will guarantee you, Dan, that there were almost no perfect performances, but we had moments of brilliance, and they were enough to override the small mistakes we made.
And it really is a lesson for all of us, right? When we focus so much on our mistakes, we forget that there's much more to us, and
Right.
we need to
Mhm.
celebrate those moments of brilliance or those strengths that we do have.
And what I find very interesting, I've just been thinking about recently as I've written this speech and delivered it, is that very often we judge those we love on their moments of brilliance, but we don't give ourselves the same grace.
Hmm. And you said you used to struggle with silence, but now you live in a community of a hamlet of less than fewer than 400 people, about an hour south of Calgary, where there is a lot of stillness. What
Mhm.
does stillness mean for you now, and what does it do for you?
What it does for me now is truly makes me self-aware. I'm much more aware, and especially after the cancer experience, I truly believe that part of the reason I ended up with cancer is because I was in such stress. My body was in such stress from the denial, the telling myself something didn't matter when it did, and pretending that I was extremely confident when I wasn't always, and feeling disrespected, but not feeling that I deserved to have the right to call someone on it when they disrespected me. For example, if someone interrupted me in a meeting, I would just clam up. And now I don't do that. I do try to do the cowgirl confident thing and deliver it with tact. But if someone rudely interrupts me, I don't mind interrupting their interruption and saying, "Excuse me, I haven't finished. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say once I'm done."
Hmm. So now doing these retreats and offering leadership and communication and resilience coaching, would you say that your actions are strongly aligned with your values these days?
Absolutely. And that is another thing that I offer is a free webinar once a month. It's called Creating Your Own Version of the Cowgirls Code. And what the Cowgirls Code is 7 codes of conduct that work for me. And they are based on my own core values of integrity, courage, compassion, and community. So my daily life is very much driven now by truly understanding and living by my core values.
Hmm. What kind of feedback from those you help means the most to you? What really strikes a chord with you when someone says how you affected them?
What really strikes a chord is if they tell me that I have given them the courage to step up and to find their voice and step up and speak their mind
Hmm.
and to take care of themselves, that indeed that they have first learned to lead themselves and to make decisions that keep themselves safe. And they're not afraid to draw a boundary that
Hmm.
is, and I speak a lot about open-hearted, unapologetic boundaries. So you don't want to be angry and resentful by the time you draw a boundary. You just do it at the point in time when you're calm and you can say, that just isn't going to work for me.
Hmm.
So when I find out or when I hear from someone that I have given them permission to do that or to show up brilliantly and imperfectly and not worry about that perfection, not feeling that they have to be perfect in order to be heard.
Hmm. Are you comfortable sharing some examples of times when you had to tap into your courage and stand up for something you believed in?
Sure. I remember one point in time when I was building my house. I had hired someone to build the basement, and he had done a few things that were really kind of shady, and he had cut some corners.
Hmm.
And I short paid him, and he came to the farm, and he was a big guy. And he came to the farm and was basically threatening me, trying to get the money. And I just said to him the last $7,000 that I had shorted him, and indeed to fix the stuff he had done wrong, had cost me about $11,000. And I just said, there is absolutely no way I am paying you. And he was trying to physically intimidate me.
Hmm.
And I work a lot with stallions now. And what I said to him was, I deal with 1,000 pounds of testosterone on a rope. You don't scare me.
Hmm. That's great. Great image. Yeah. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Because truly, as he was standing over me and attempting to threaten me, I realized the number of times I had faced down a horse that was testing what I was made of.
Hmm.
And I don't put myself in dangerous situations. I read the situation, and I was pretty sure this guy was, a typical bully, all bluster and bluff. And if I just called him on it, he would back off. And indeed, he did.
Now, a lot of people may not be as fortunate to be able to make the big change that you did, which is leave a corporate type job and leave the city and go to a quieter setting and to a job that was in that quieter setting. But what I know you've also done a lot of volunteer work. That's very interesting to me how there's so many opportunities for someone to add those activities in their free time, those activities that give them that sense of purpose that doesn't require a major sacrifice or major uprooting of their whole life. Can you talk
Right.
a bit about some of the volunteering you've done in the past, what it's meant to you, and any advice you'd have for someone else who just wants to incorporate those types of activities that will give them that sense of purpose into their life?
One of the things I did early on that really gave me a huge sense of purpose was therapeutic riding. And there are a few places that offer therapeutic riding around Calgary. The one I know of in particular is in the Nanton area. It's called Journeys Therapeutic Riding Society. And they are always looking for volunteers that can do things like just lead a horse. Some of the riders are quite severely handicapped and actually require three people, one to lead the horse and one on each side of the horse. So it takes three volunteers for one of the riders. So something like Journeys, there are a few others. Opening Gates, I think, is another one. Gateways, maybe. But you could just Google therapeutic riding. Another is ROAR, ROARR, and I can't remember what it stands for. But that's another place where they have miniature horses primarily, and they work with senior citizens. So they are always looking for volunteers to help with that kind of thing. So if horses in particular are your thing and you'd like to try, that would be something that you could do to get you involved with horses a little and really make a difference in the lives of some people that really do need the kind of stimulation that horses can provide. With the riding, in particular, some of the children that I've done the most work with have cerebral palsy. And being on the back of a horse, the stretch that it gives in their hips and their legs can be really remarkable for them and really make a difference in the way they feel, even for several days after a therapeutic riding session.
What age were you when you made the move from the city to the rural setting?
31.
And how would you describe the difference? Like if someone were to meet Jocelyn at 25 versus 35, how different would you have been in terms of your temperament, just your happiness? What changes would they notice?
I was not a peaceful person, Dan. For example, if I was sitting beside you, my leg would always be bouncing. I just had a tremendous amount of pent-up energy. And something that people comment on now is when they're around me, I'm calm almost all the time. And again, that's something I've learned from the horses. Young horses in particular look very much to their leaders and the more experienced horses around them to keep them calm. And if you have a young horse on a lead rope and it gets scared, if you are calm, very often they'll settle really quickly. But if you respond to their fear by getting scared too, it just snowballs and it gets really ugly. So I've learned that when they get really anxious, the more anxious they get, the quieter, calmer, and slower I get to provide that kind of guidance for them and to be their touchstone for them to calm back down.
And not just between people and animals, but emotions are contagious, obviously, between people
Absolutely.
and people. Yeah. Are there still certain types of people that you find difficult to be around where their emotions kind of start to get you tense?
Not really, not anymore. Certainly for many years they did, but at this point in time, I think because I have spent so much time with the horses and I've realized that I think one of the things I think about is when I was a novice rider, it took me a long time to realize that when I was on the horse, of course, they could feel my legs on them. They could feel my seat against the saddle. They could also feel how I was pulling on the bit. And if I was nervous, all they knew was their rider was nervous. It never, ever occurred to them that it was them that was making me nervous. All they knew is my rider is nervous and dang it, I am going to find what's scaring them. And then they would be on high alert. And of course, the more nervous they got, the more nervous I got, and it got ugly. And when I just learned to really take a deep breath, calm myself, relax myself, there's no way you can fake that. And the more I realized I had become a competent horseback rider, my confidence really increased. And I find that that can be something that's different between men and women. Sometimes men, quite often actually, men will become quite confident before they become competent. But my experience with women is that many of us need to feel incredibly competent before we feel a sense of confidence.
What role do you feel like you can play to facilitate that? Just make them aware of that, or what else can you do?
Right. that's part of what I can do, and help them understand that the harsh self-judgment that we talked about earlier benefits no one. That judging themselves so harshly, they really are damaging themselves. And if they just give themselves a break, give themselves a little grace, and really search for those moments of brilliance, well, I might not have done this very well, but this was dynamite. I was really on my game for this 30 seconds. And celebrate those times, that life becomes much easier.
And is that central to your sense of purpose now? Like, how would you describe what gives you the greatest sense of purpose right now?
I really think that is it. And one of the first things I generally talk to women about is that I am here to give them permission to show up brilliantly and imperfectly until they can give that permission to themselves. If they need someone to give them permission, I'm their girl.
Wonderful. I think that's maybe a good place to wrap up. I think you've offered some very inspiring insights, and it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Jocelyn. Thank you for sharing your moments of brilliance and your personal experiences that led to you being able to act with such a sense of purpose in your life.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this message. I really do appreciate it, Dan.